I'm going to show you guys a really easy test to look at single leg loading, and we're going to really focus on the foot and ankle in this video. Now, a lot of people have figured out that they use a lunge to wall test to look to see how much ankle dorsiflexion range of motion they have. And then a lot of people will stretch this out and they'll use a box. Maybe they'll throw a band around the ankle below the malleoli or the bumps on the ankle to add a little glide to the talus bone. So we're basically working on ankle mobility here, right? Specifically for dorsiflexion. But what I see happen is a lot of them will open up this mobility and they'll regain some range of motion, but then they don't practice seeing if they can dynamically control that motion. And if you've had tight ankles for a long time and you've been aggressive with this mobility work and you've gained 5-10 degrees of ankle dorsiflexion, it's a good idea to load that new range of motion rather than just assuming that you have control over it, because some people will do a split squat or a squat and they'll find that they're good here with the range they've had, but all of a sudden if they go a little further with something like a loaded exercise, they don't quite feel like they have the control. So we want to make sure that we have at least spend some time looking at a way to test that control to see if after we've gained the motion we know how to use it. So what I've come up with here is, one of the ways I like to do this is with a Y balance test, and not everybody can afford to buy the equipment for a Y balance test, so I'm going to show you guys a way to look at loading ankle dorsiflexion and to see if you have control over it, and we'll do it in a really cheap way that we can reproduce so that our test is we can replicate it again and again to see if we're getting anywhere. So let's look at what you'll need for this test. It's pretty cheap. You're going to need a tape measure so you can mark a start and an end point, and then you're going to need a furniture slider. Now these are really cheap. You can get them on Amazon for like $5 or $10. Don't buy the fancy ones. Just regular furniture slider will do. You just need something that's going to slide under your foot here. So here's how the test works. I'm looking left versus right, and this is a loading test again, into end range ankle dorsiflexion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up with my feet just a few inches apart. Okay, I've got one foot on this furniture slider, and I've marked out a line here so I know where I'm starting and finishing. I'll give you guys a close-up to see this here in a second, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to stand on this left leg, and then I'm going to go as far as I can on this left leg, sliding this forward without picking up my heel on the left foot. Okay, I'm going to slide it out as far as I can, and I can't push off of it to stand back up. I also can't kick it out in front of me. So this is really just looking at what I can control. So I'm going to slide as far out as I can, squatting down this left leg without lifting the heel, and then I have to stand back up and stand for a second. That's to see if I actually controlled that movement. Now, measurement's really important because if we want to reproduce this again and again, we have to have the measurement down. So I've got a tape measure here. I know my starting point is right here where this rubber meets the AstroTurf here. Now, in your case, if you're doing it at home and you've got your slider on the carpet, then you want to go from maybe the wall is your point here. And then your starting point is where this little mark is on the slider, because a lot of people will slide with their toe back here, then they'll slide with their toe up here, and that's going to give you a different measurement, and you won't know that inconsistency exists. So what I've done here is I've got, from this point forward, I'm going to the 10-inch mark. Okay, we'll just make the math easy, okay? I'm going to line this chalk mark on the slider up with that 10-inch mark. Now, if you want to get really particular, you can go, at the on this side of the chalk, you can use that line, or you can use this line. Just make sure whatever you do, you keep it consistent, okay? So I've got the middle of that chalk line lined up with the 10-inch mark here. Now to perform the test, I've got it lined up here with the 10-inch mark. That's where my foot is starting on this chalk line, okay? Toes all the way up to the edge of that chalk line. And then I'm just gonna slide this out as far as I can, standing on that left leg. And remember, the left heel doesn't leave the ground on the stance leg. We're going to slide as far as we can, then we're going to stand up, balance for 1 second to make sure that was a legitimate move, and then we'll just look and see where we got. Now, this is about, looks like 36 inches. Now again, you can decide where you want to measure with this chalk. If you have a little pencil and it's a finer line, it's not as big of a deal. In this case, I'll measure on the base of this line, and I'll just make sure, again, I keep that consistent. It's about 36 inches. So we went from 10 inches to 36 inches, so our gain is 26. So for my left foot on the ground, I got 26 inches. So if I come back to the starting point, now I'll go slider under the left foot, okay? I have to make sure that I line this up at the 10-inch mark. So there's the 10-inch mark, and I'm going to stand on it with the left foot now, okay? Again, feet are just a few inches apart, and I'm going to slide this down as far as I can this way. And then I'll come back up, just like that. remeasure the distance. I just kind of went to the same spot again, but you'll be able to tell if you have a difference right versus left. So there we have a reproducible test we can use if we don't have the Y-balance equipment, that we can check to see as we go with weight-bearing dorsiflexion, do we have control of that full range? Is that control and is that range the same side to side? This is a nice easy test to tell that. Now if you want to get even more particular as you do the test, just another tip you can use is we can go barefoot and you can watch to see, do I have an arch collapse? You can watch to see the foot control. Because in addition to using this test for just looking at ankle, loading the lower limb and looking at ankle mobility and control, you can use it as a foot control test. So it's the same setup, but now we're actually going to watch the technique of the stance leg to see, does that navicular bone drop towards the ground whenever I go into that dorsiflexion? Is it similar side to side? A barefoot test is going to give you a better visual tool for that, so you can come up with a way to assess kind of control. So you have a measurement here, and then you can watch, maybe if you videotape it, you can see, okay, does my ankle control look the same? Am I dropping inward on this side but not on the other side? Or maybe is it symmetric and I do it the same both ways? Really, really particular would be to combine a navicular drop test, which is looking at, the navicular base here, its relation to the ground, taking a measurement in quiet stance, and then taking a measurement at the end range here. You'd need another person to do that, but there's a way you can combine these tests to get a little bit more out of it. So we can look at, single limb loading, specifically into in-range ankle dorsiflexion, and we can also look at this test to look at foot control. Very seldomly do I combine the two, especially if I don't have another person in here to help me with the measurement, but this is just a little tool you guys can consider to use. I would not use this information and act like it's the same as a Y-balance test. It's not. The Y-balance test is going to have you go 3 different directions. That tool's been validated, and so I wouldn't want to use this number and act like it's that number, so we wouldn't throw this into any sort of prediction model for injury risk. But if we just want to see, okay, what is my single limb control? Maybe I want to see if I can control my end range ankle dorsiflexion. This is a nice reproducible way for you to do that. So I hope this was helpful.